All right, I think we're live. So, what's up, anyone who's going to join or who sees this later? Going live with Zach Woodward. I decided to go live now, and then he's going to jump in. And, actually, this is our first time doing a joint live. So, we'll make sure we get this going the right way, and then we'll have a conversation. Thank you, Joey. M Nation 6. The first person who joined, I don't want to butcher your name, but it looks like Mansidesh. Something like this. Thank you guys all for stopping in. And Zach should be in here in the next couple minutes. So if you guys have any questions, throw them down in the comments. We'll do a Q&A for sure. So we'll touch on kind of the topics we want to. But at any time, if you have a question, just throw it in the comment box, and then when we do a Q&A portion, we'll handle all those questions. We'll go back and swipe through. Okay, so I see Zach joined, but how do we get him to higher power 2? Sajjad, here we go. Zach is about to be in. Zach, what's up, man?
Yo, what's going on?
How you doing?
Doing all right, man. How are you? It's good to finally meet you unofficially over Zoom from across the world.
Right. I mean, I've seen so many of your videos, and then on Real Movement, many posts, but never talked to you before.
I know. That's long time coming. So appreciate you finally together. It's been good.
Yeah, happy to, man. I'm excited about this conversation. So, Zach and I were talking earlier, and we were deciding kind of how to format this, and we thought the best way to go about it is just to go off the cuff. So that's how we're going to do it. And what we really want to touch on is soccer specific, looking at the way training methods are going today, what are being implemented, and kind of over the next decade, how we see things should change and what might need to change for the better of the athletes. So you started something called the Athletic Transformation Project. So why don't you tell everyone a little bit about you and then a little bit about the Transformation Project?
Yeah, sure. So my master's degree right now, I'm over UCF. I've been playing since I was young. I started off playing at Florida Tech, so a little D2 Melbourne, was doing engineering. Gonna do. Finally figured out that was not for me. The sports performance stuff, I'd been strength training, was in high school, so transferred over to that, and then just working everywhere I could. 3 different college weight rooms now.
Okay.
Collins and at UF. Been in a lot of those kind of private sports facilities and like that.
Yeah.
And got involved with probably 2 or 3 years following Ben's stuff online, and found out he was in water just a couple hours away, and drove over and have been doing that stuff ever since, and had a lot of success myself, and just with this kind of random start and build that out. My own sort of training, doing that in the college setting, in private sports performance setting, and things like that. Very hard. People around you. So a lot of stuff is still very new. A lot of these ideas are very new. You still get pushed back. Other people in the industry and things like that. They're the only way to really do the way I wanted to go and just my own, and kind of build my own. And so that's the Athletic Transformation Project, and it's been going for, honestly, it's only been now, but it's starting to get a little bit of Orlando, and so to keep it going, people will keep.
Yeah, that's awesome. A couple things. One, you're cutting in and out a little bit here and there. I can get the total gist. I heard everything you said, but there are just moments where you're cutting in and out. I'm not sure if that's on my end or on your end.
Yeah, I'm
But
hearing some weird noises going on too. I don't know if that's you or me.
no, that's really interesting. Okay, hold on. Let me see something. Let me just make. Am I cutting in and out as well?
I don't even know if it's cutting in and out. It sounds like there's something like clicking with like a mic. And like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I know what you mean. The clicking. Okay, let's see. Well, anyways, what I wanted to ask you about that is, so then when you're in these college weight rooms, right? Because you said you went to 3, right? You've been in 3 different college weight rooms, including
Yeah.
some professional or some private settings. What did you work with strength coaches there, like the college strength coaches that were already existing in those settings?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was at Florida Tech. That was the first place I started. I was just volunteering there because like I didn't or like anything. Like they had like 2 strength coaches for we had there, and so helping. They're like, hell yeah. That one is just like helping. I that like I was just running a program. Like there were so many of them in the weight. 15, 20 guys come in at a time, and so I'd shadow the first 2 or 3, and then he'd like peace out, and I'd run the last ones.
Yeah.
But then like over at Rollins, I got to take a little bit more of a coaching role, and then same thing at UCF.
Okay, that's super cool. And so what?
I'm hearing people. One sec, sorry. I'm just hearing people say it's on my side. Like I just don't know what to.
Yeah. Right now, actually, you're pretty clear. You were not breaking up right now. Wherever you just moved.
I'll try not to move.
So, what in those settings? What did you learn? Both positive, negative, whatever your takeaways were. What did you learn working in those types of settings?
Probably the biggest thing is that the kind of college route's not for me. Like the college like strength and conditioning setting's not for me. I love the team environment. That's definitely the best part of it. I'm just go inside, see if that's any better. I don't know why.
You actually in that spot where you were really clear. But
yeah,
it's up to you.
If you say so, we'll see how it goes. But that's a lot of it. Like there's just a lot of difficulty with. There's a lot of hoops to jump through that you don't have a lot of control over. That kind of come between you and like the team or things like that. Like working with the sport coaches, working with the athlete's schedule, like working with soccer. You're going to be the here. Is that better?
Yeah.
Somebody told me to disconnect my Wi-Fi, so I tried that.
Yeah.
But yeah, just being in soccer, like, no, it still sounds terrible. You're like 3rd or 4th, like priority on the totem pole and things like that. So it's just, all right, last thing I could figure out, I took my case off in case that was somehow messing with the noise. But yeah, there's just a lot of things that kind of come between what you and what you're trying to do. And there's a lot of kind of, especially when you're in the kind of college weight room and things like that, there's just a lot of things that you see a little bit more of that kind of old school strength and conditioning mindset, in the sense that like it's a little bit more focused on the powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, like those kind of derivatives and different things like that. And it's just a little bit more of not even that like old boys club kind of thing, but it is a little bit more like there's not a lot of room for experimentation and things like that. Like unless like, you're like the guy, like a Cal Dietz type, like he does all sorts of weird stuff in the weight room and he talks about it all the time, but like he's the guy, you know, so he's allowed to. Like if you're working for Cal Dietz, not so much. So I had a hard time of like being able to experiment and try new things and different things like that. Because it's so much of like, we need to win right now. We need to play everything safe so that like nobody gets hurt. Like there's not a lot of like long-term development and all sorts of things like that.
Yeah, that's super cool. And so then that sort of experience where you didn't get much room for experimentation, sounds like that's what ultimately led you then to start ATP, the Athletic Transformation Project?
Yeah, 100%. Going from the college route to the private sports performance route, I thought I was going to get a little bit more freedom there, which I think in some cases you did. I just hadn't, in my experience, I didn't get the kind of opportunity that I was kind of looking for. And I mean, still like had great experiences every step of the way with all of this stuff in terms of the college route and the private route. Like definitely met some great people, and I think there are great people in all of those settings. But yeah, definitely just it was time for me to, if I was going to be able to do things the way that I wanted to do them, that I had to kind of step out and step into my own world a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. And so this, I think it's a good segue to, okay, so let's talk about, we've got the existing world, the training, kind of the training world as it fits around soccer, modern training. And then we've got your world that you want to step into. So talk to us a little bit about the gap between those two worlds. What were you trying to fill? What were you trying to change from what's going on here to what you see should be happening?
So with soccer specifically, I think we're definitely somewhat behind the curve from the training. And it depends on where we want to go, if we want to be like athlete route or just like the everyday, like over here in the States. I think one of the areas in the world you're starting to see people go into a lot more is this sports science data of this kind of high tech like analytics stuff. Got a heart rate monitor measuring like that. A lot of like data analysis, prevent like overtraining and all sorts of. And I have some experience. I think I've done.
We've got people saying audio's cutting off. I'd go back to where you were in the house because your audio wasn't cutting off there.
Yeah, I agree. Just got to go for a walk.
Yeah. Because you're right. There's definitely been, especially I feel like in the last 10 years, big swing in data, right? Using data to make data-driven decisions, and when it comes to modern sports, but so including soccer.
Yeah, and I think they're trying to go in the right direction with that in terms of like monitoring like player fatigue and things like that, especially with how much more condensed seasons are becoming and things like they're trying to find a way to manage training load and manage stress and make sure players are recovering in that optimal like peak state and stuff like that to be able to go and play. And so from that side of things, like I think they're doing like a pretty good job. But it's again, I think strength and conditioning side are still missing. I guess if we had to go with like boil it down to a single idea, it's the idea that Ben's taken from Paula Quinn, that idea of like strength curves, and that's what he's really figured out really, really well with like the knees in particular. But just applying that to just all aspects of training the way that he's done, like I think that's one of the biggest things that just across the board that we're lacking like training wise. We have all of this stuff with like velocity-based training and all these like very like advanced weight rooms and different things like that to really monitor and train and improve like power output and force production and things like that. But it's still that idea of training, manipulating different parts of the strength curve, getting strong in that full bend like versus the top end range, like finding structural balance from left side to right side, from front to back, like different things like that. Those are just the areas that to me, I still see lacking. And when those are the areas that when I've been working on with my athletes, that we've had a lot of success in terms of coming back from injuries, reducing injuries, or just like improving performance.
Absolutely. One thing I see that you use a lot that I don't see used that often are you use isometrics a lot. I feel like for warm-ups, but like before the activity or after. And I see that you do that for the tendon health, but also I'm wondering, is it also to kind of condition the CNS, the central nervous system?
Yeah, 100%. I got a lot of that stuff from Jake Tura and Tommy John and Alex Santera, are three guys, like Alex Santera in particular, that uses them very, very well. And they all use them for kind of different purposes. But so I've kind of stolen bits and pieces for those. But especially, I like to use them a lot for the tendon health side of things. Kind of Jake Tura and Keith Barr go into some of that research a little bit, like how with the isometrics, how you can actually get like very slight like lengthening through the tendon, can realign like collagen and different fibers and things like that. And so that's one thing that can really help balance out all the training that we do from like the muscular side and kind of just work on that muscular tendon complex and things like that. Definitely like you could get into it from the CNS perspective, from just like a motor learning kind of thing, just learning different positions. And one thing, because I'm just working out of like a park right now for the most part, I don't have a ton of abilities, but I do love those, like the overcoming isometrics and things like that, where it's like a max intensity for 5, 6, 7 seconds. Those for me are great neurological stimulus and things like that. Just haven't been able to do a ton of them lately.
Yeah, you got to work with what you've got at the park.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think that's what you mentioned about, right, the full, basically the strength curve, right, and getting all full range of motion. I think that's where I've seen one of the greatest rooms for improvement is you see a lot of partial range of motion training, which in and of itself is not necessarily a problem, but it becomes a problem when you only train, right, in the partial range of motion and you never get full bend of the knees, you never get full range of motion in the shoulders, these sorts of things. And I think that's a big area where there's not really, and the flexible, Jeff talked about this, like in team sports, there's always a next man, right? There's always another guy. So there's not as much attention paid to, like you've talked about earlier, the long-term health of an athlete, because if he gets injured, it sucks, but there's another guy waiting for his spot who you can just shove in there and give him the same training routine and hope he doesn't get injured as well. But if he does, there's still another guy. There's always someone trying to play. And I think that has a big impact on how the training is going, because there's no incentive really for these trainers to care about the long-term health of their athlete.
Yeah, like it comes back to like the only solution that I've really seen people use for that is the like load monitoring stuff, like how many minutes are you playing, like what was the training volume like trying to basically rest players and figure out like just how much can I rest them, can I push them, like that's kind of where the direction it's gone versus, like you say, yeah, there's not a lot of like what can we do to physically prepare this athlete to be more resilient, to handle this training stress better, to be able to just not always have that kind of like worry in the back of their mind of like whether or not they're going to actually get like be able to last through a season. Probably the one other side of that too, the other side that we can touch on, especially in college environments when I was there, like whether it's the coaches or the athletes, like there's a real like avoidance or kind of resistance of doing anything, like whether that's just like a soccer thing, but coaches and athletes, like there's lots of them, not all the time, but at least half the team, like little bit of like hesitation, a little bit of like trepidation if we're going anything like 80-90% or anything like that. So again, it comes back to that neurological, that CNS stimulus. That can be one of the biggest things that, especially in season, just doing like a little bit of stuff, like literally 1 to 2 sets, so like 1 to 2 reps of something that's like an 80 or 90% can really help like maintain power outputs and things like that. So when you were talking about everything's like quarter range of motion and things like that, that's just because everyone's read the latest research, and the fastest way to improve my vertical jump in 6 weeks is to do like quarter box squats or different things like that. And so everyone's on that, how quickly can I make an adaptation versus like what's the greatest adaptation I can make over time. And I think that's probably the biggest like shift. Like Ben's talked about it all the time. Like you can get 6 inches in 6 weeks, but what 52 in 52 weeks, like that might be the biggest shift like for me, is where can I take this 19-year-old kid? Like I don't care what level he's at right now, where could he be when he's 21? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's super powerful, because what connected with me is, and you know, we're not going to talk really at all about diet, but a big problem with people in diet, right, is they choose diets that aren't sustainable. So, you know, they try to lose 30 pounds in 6 weeks. So that brings me back to what you're just saying, right? Like you can get 6 inches on your vertical in 6 weeks. Is that sustainable for your body? Can you keep that up? Like I think that's where I see the disconnect is, right? Like we have the health of the athlete and the performance of the athlete aren't quite connecting. And like you said, on the health side, right now we're going with a more avoidance, right? It's like, okay, how much can we rest so this guy doesn't break down, you know, this season or next season? But what would happen if we asked them, how do we make this guy, as Nassim Taleb would say, anti-fragile? How can we get
I love that idea.
out there and, you know, no matter what the stimulus, he can always bounce back and he's not going to break down. And so that's a really powerful idea, I think, that you said, which is talking about not just in the quickest time period, but what is the maximal gain you can make in a way that allows you to be out there. Because if you're not available, that 40-inch vertical, that 4.3 speed, it doesn't matter. If you're sitting on your couch, it doesn't matter.
And the thing that like it's ironic almost is like that approach is the fastest way to get better. Like in the long term, like if you want to get as good as you possibly can, the fastest way to get there is to do it slow, like is to do it the right way. Like the person, like if you somehow are one of those people that actually gain those 6 inches in 6 weeks, like you've just added so much power that your body is not prepared for, that like week 7 or 8, like watch out, like things are getting like dicey, like just because it's like putting the Ferrari engine in a golf cart. Like that's probably the other side of things from the strength curve, is probably that idea of like balance. We're so obsessed with hip extension and stuff like that and power that we neglect a lot of these little things. And we think like doing stability ball, like balance work on the RX pad is going to give me the stability through my ankle, like that, to go and handle like aggressive cuts and things like that. And so that's probably the other big area that I think just like, it's not good enough almost. Like we could do more.
Yeah, 100% we could do more. And I think like when you break it down and you look at the amount of force, so when you're jogging and just a light jog, a little run, you're getting 3 to 8 times your body weight of force. So, you know, no one in the gym on the RX pad is sustaining, well, let's say they weigh 160, they're not sustaining 480 pounds balancing. That's just not realistic. So it's not really a preparatory mechanism that will translate to when you're sprinting and having to stop, right? Like we've got to do something, like you said, there's something better that we can be doing to train that aspect that has more carryover to sport.
Yeah, 100%. Even like I love to compare, because guys ask me about like balance stuff all the time. And I like to compare that to like doing a Patrick step up with like your body weight on your back. So like I'm almost 200 pounds, call it 2. So if I've got my body weight of 200 pounds plus another 200 pounds of weight, and I'm doing that through a loaded movement through one foot, like the stability that I'm going to get through that, like the freaking glute med that I'm going to forget these like minivan, like exercises, the minivan clamshells, like the activation and the stability that I'm going to get through that is so much greater too. It's just like, it doesn't look like quote unquote, like balance work. And that's kind of, I guess, like a pet peeve I have. A lot of like you know, if you get all the Instagram trainers doing all this stuff with like the speed ladders and different things like that. And like, it looks cool. Like they're moving fast, they're working hard, but like the carryover, like, how do you know if that's really?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. The speed ladder, because Poliquin said, you know, the speed ladder only makes you better at doing the speed ladder. That's no real carryover. And if you look at it, when I always explain to people, like if you look at quickness, right? Quickness, because that's what most people I assume are doing it for, right? Like quickness never happens over this short of a range of motion. Feet go like this, feet go like this, feet go like this, right? You've got to be able to push off with strength, quick.
And without the center of mass moving or anything like that, like that also still like just the feet move. Like, yeah, it doesn't happen.
Like there's just no carryover. And I think that's probably one of the issues, is that like we do too much. We spend too much time on stuff that doesn't have carryover to our sport.
Yeah, I mean, even stuff like when I was younger, like I was all about the speed ladder, and I was even all about like the parachute and stuff like that. And like, I'm sure like there's probably, even with the parachute, like there's probably something to like resisted running, like sprinters do like light sled sprints and things like that. But like there was just so much more stuff that I could do like for that, like that would have improved like my performance. Like I think another like almost misconception, especially if we're going more towards like the younger side, is that like if I want to get faster, more explosive, like everything that I do needs to be very fast and bouncy and very explosive. Like if you improve just strength, very slow strength in certain places, you're going to get so much faster because you're strong enough to handle your body, that like power to weight ratio, right? So like maybe we could get into like maybe those parachute sprints, like there's some benefit for that, but like just by doing Nordics, I'm going to get so much faster than I would like that.
Yeah, and that's a really good point too, is areas, right? Because some players will have certain muscular strengths already. They may have strong hamstrings, whatever. But, you know, if you're leaking power at your ankle and your feet suck, then all the power that you could generate from your glutes, from your hamstrings, from the posterior chain in general is going to get lost because your ankle collapses every time, you know, you take a step. So it's like, you've also got to be, I think, in the training world, cognizant of not every player needs the same thing, right? We need to figure out where this guy's leaking energy. Where is he weakest, and where is that affecting, you know, kind of his output, his ability to output.
And I'm glad you said the foot and ankle, because that one's such a big one. Like it's just so underdeveloped in like 95% of the guys that I work with compared to everything else. Like most, like pretty much every guy that comes to me for the first time, like has never done a tibialis raise in his life.
Yeah.
And like working on like, maybe lots of guys have done lots of standing calf raises, but the soleus has never worked. Like some of the foot ankle isos that like I'll do and things like that. And it is usually like an easier sell for soccer players, thankfully, because like we work with our feet, so it is a little bit easier. Like, okay, my feet should probably work. Like that one's a little bit easier. Some other athletes are like, oh, like get out of here with this stuff. But that one is like, that's why I love, that's actually one of the benefits for me of why I've been like working out at the park, is like get them barefoot, get them in the grass, like let their feet work. Like, so when they're working with the sled, they can really dig with their toes and things like that. Like, just getting that will link up so much stuff that guys have already built some of that power in the weight room, or just naturally athletic, or like playing and stuff like that. Like that will connect, like you say, so many things and improve strength and power, just because like now everything's actually working together when they go and play, when they go and try and run, jump.
100%. And I love that. And any athletes that are on here, and I see one of my favorite athletes, Deuce, just joined. What up, Deuce? And like, if you can get 1 or 2 times a week some barefoot training in, you know, walk on grass, walk on sand, wherever you're at. I know some people are going to be in colder environments, so it'll be a little bit harder, but I love that you're getting barefoot training in, because without that connection to your feet, like you and I both touched on, you lose the power. And the shoes most of us wear and the amount of time we spend walking on concrete, it basically shuts off our foot, right? Like the fascia in our feet and the muscles, they stop working. And so then, you know, you go to plant, you go to sprint, and with each step, you're literally losing all the power you built up, you know, up top above the knee. You're losing it because you didn't work on the ankle and the foot. And like, that's a really frustrating experience, because you put in work and you strengthen certain areas, but just because you neglected the feet and the ankles, you're not doing, you just can't do what you should be able to do if you were just to pay a little attention to those.
But they think like, because like, oh, I'm still not getting the results that I want, I've got to do more, I've got to go farther down that other way. Like, yeah, like one of the first things I tell guys, because like the guys are always like, why are we taking my shoes off again? Like, because that's always like a hesitation with guys, is like, I always tell them, or like remind them, that we've got like pretty close to the same number of nerve endings in the bottom of your feet that we do in our hands. Like that same like sensitivity, that same dexterity. Like imagine trying to do like a skill sport, imagine trying to play the piano with gloves on. Like that idea of a slide, you know what I mean? Like it's the same concept. Like they've got that same kind of, we don't have the same dexterity with our toes. Some of those like toe yogis do. But like that same kind of finesse and stuff like that is there. And so yeah, that's just something that I love to get guys, like, it's just so powerful from linking that up. One of the guys I know, Liam sent me a message earlier. I think he said something here about, he was wanting to ask about like kind of hip flexor groin issues. Because I know that's a big thing for soccer guys. One of my mentors was actually talking, I didn't even realize this. Like I knew hip flexor injuries and stuff like that were big, but he was telling me that they were the #1, like, most common injury site for soccer players, which makes
Really?
sense. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
More than hamstrings.
More than hamstrings. Yeah. I'm not in like severity, but in number, which
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
said, yeah, that actually kind of makes sense. 'Cause pretty much everyone I know has tweaked their groin at one point. And that one is especially for soccer players, obviously because of the discrepancy of what my legs are doing and one's planting and one's kicking and how much the hip flexors are going to work through there. So yeah, that's probably a massive area that probably gets underlooked, underdeveloped for most of my guys, like more than almost anywhere else besides maybe like the foot and the ankle.
Okay.
So that's an area like Liam, the two biggest things for that for me are obviously like the split squats and the good mornings. Like if you get really good at those two, like you're going to get so much just mobility and strength and protection through kind of both of those that you're going to be good to go. Like you can go farther. We can get into the direct hip flexor work for foot speed and things like that. We can get into our pink. Oh, there we go, still there. But those two are going to be the best for me because we're getting lengthening but still under tension. I think that's one of the most powerful things about a lot of the ATG movements, that like strength through length stuff. Like, yes, it is like quote unquote stretching and we're getting more mobility through there, but we're building a level of protection because in that fully stretched position of like a split squat or something like that, those hip flexors are still under the tension of my entire body weight. And so they build that, like there's something about it that we get a little bit more resiliency with that than we do with just like plain stretching. And with both of those, especially for you, then you're a goalkeeper and stuff like that. One of my best athletes that I'm working with right now is a goalkeeper. And that imbalance, so like from the split squats that we get from side to side in terms of rebalancing those two, like really spending some time in there can be one of the best things that you can do for that.
Yeah. And so I agree 100% with that. I love split squat. And so just to add a little different value, I want to add in, I think, one or two things that I would consider as well. If you have a really tight groin, then I would go for weighted butterflies. Like if you find that you're having constant problems with the groin, which at one point when I was in high school, I thought that was just a rite of passage to being a good soccer player. So your groin was supposed to be tight. Not true, guys. It's not true. And then the other one would be, so any of you who are on here who follow ATG, you know Ben uses jump balance. And I think a really powerful thing that people should be doing, and actually Basketball Biology, who I don't know if he's on anymore, he worked with the goalkeeper back in Kenosha, and he employed kick balance with the goalie. He was also a goalie. And so what they did is one time a week, they would have him kick for accuracy and then for power on his goal kicks. And he would use his right and then I don't know what his dominant foot was, but dominant and non-dominant. And what you see over time is that's another way to balance out your sides so that that when you're going into competition, right, that you can trust that both sides are close enough together that you're not going to get injured. So I think kick balance is actually a really big one, and you don't have to go overboard on it. If you go one time a week and you spend some time kicking with your non-dominant leg, then you can reduce the chance of injury, because there was a study that came out that said your dominant leg, so the one you kick with, you're 70% more likely to get a knee injury because you spend so much time planting on your dominant planting leg, but you don't ever plant on your kicking leg. So I think kick balance is a big one that we're not using right now that we could be. And if you look at someone like Cristiano Ronaldo, who's been really resilient to major injury, and you watch his highlights from Man U to Madrid to Juventus, like one thing that you can see is the guy can kick equally as hard with his left as he can with his right. And he also plays jump balance, but the jump balance, he also jumps off all four plants when you look at the video, and can land on all four. But from the kicking perspective, like he can pull off moves at high speed, planting on either right or left, and then moving at any speed, he can blast one upper 90 from 30 yards away, left or right. So I think kick balance is one that that's a good one to start implementing with players.
Yeah, 100%. I do think especially for like younger kids just growing up, like it would just be such a valuable thing. Like I've had kids where I just stand like 15 yards of the goal, and I'm like, I don't care where it goes, just like give me clean contact, repeat, like just learning how to smoothly strike through a ball. And The one piece that I've kind of added into with a lot of this stuff is more of like, you know, like those like Copenhagen's, the kind of like side planks where you're pinching those, because those get a little bit more like directly into the groin, which I found like a few of my guys have needed a little bit more stuff than just the split squats and the hip flexor work. So for Liam, that's basically like if you're imagining a side plank, but where your top leg was on a bench. So like that was going to support your weight. So you have to like really fire that kind of inner groin and stuff like that to hold you up. I don't like to do those from their feet because like you get a little torque on the knee. I really like to bend the knee and then go. So like your knee and your foot would both be on the bench, and like 90 degrees, your torso would be coming back this way. And you do like a side plank in that. And that's a really good one to kind of balance out that groin as well.
Yeah. So were there any other? I didn't really see.
I saw that one come through. He texted me that a couple of days ago, so I haven't been looking other.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling through right now. Danny, Faust, Ansho, thank you guys for joining. I don't know if you're still here. Love you guys.
One other thing that I like, one kind of other area that I'm big on for all of my guys, but like just soccer guys in particular too, is like top speed work. I think that's something that guys get so little of, and they don't realize that they're not getting it. Just because like you think you're playing all the time, we're running hard, we're doing sprints and things like that. But really like actually opening up, doing full on like 60, 70, 80 yard sprints is like getting into that top end threshold is something that I think has been really powerful for a lot of my guys. Besides, like it's research has shown it's one of the best ways, again, to prevent hamstring injuries. Like if you're doing top speed work in Nordics, you're going to be good to go. But then also from like the kind of trickle down effect of like they've shown this, I think Caldice has talked about this too, like when you improve someone's top speed, every other quality, like speed quality, like sub-max speed, fitness, even change of direction, like everything else like improves with it. So it's really just like the kind of pinnacle of speed qualities, and it's something that guys never get into. So like literally just going out to a field and just opening up your legs the entire like goal line to goal line, and just striding it out and walking back. Like that's one thing that I do with a lot of my guys like once a week, that I think's massive for speed development and injury prevention at the same time.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it goes back to the this common, I guess, advice, which is right, like. You get faster from sprinting. You get a faster sprint by sprinting. You got to open up, and you got to, and you don't really need to do it. I think more than once a week. I think once a week is probably good because then you've got your trainings, you've got your games, and most of the strength work we do, acceleration improves. I feel like we get a lot of acceleration gains just from split squats, good mornings, seated or standing, like all these exercises, calf raises, soleus work. You know, your acceleration is improving. But that top end speed, if you don't open up to it, you don't usually get the gains. And I think the combination of top end speed work plus direct hip flexor work is, and maybe some, I don't know how you feel about this, but maybe some single leg back extension as well.
I'm actually really big. I've been doing those more because like I'm like, damn it, I know I've been slacking on those. But it is amazing how little it takes. Like when you're talking about I do 3 sprints in a session, which I do once a week. So I literally do 3 sprints a week with my guys. Like we'll take 3 to 4 minutes in between each one. And like, that's all it takes. It's just, we got to touch it. We got to touch it though. Like we got to get into that top end range threshold. And that kind of made me realize like a lot of the kind of principles or a lot of what I'm doing is I'm trying to build up the pieces or give guys the tools that balance out what they're getting in their training. So like that's not what they're getting in their training already. So a lot of what they're going to do is going to be very short and sharp. It's going to be very like kind of mid-range quad intensive and things like that. A lot of cutting, a lot of change of direction, like very hard on like joints and things like that. So what do I want to do? I need to make sure that they have everything else. I need to make sure that they've got very like full range, a lot of those deep squats and stuff like that, kind of stimulating those tendons and ligaments. And then from the speed and plyo stuff, like can we get into that top end speed? Like give them everything that they're not getting from their training to keep them balanced out, to keep them working at a very high level so that then they can go and push and compete and train as hard as they can and let that be the stimulus.
Yeah, I love that because I think, and we see this, right, when you look at athletes who specialize early, like 9, 7, 8, 9, they tend to have more injuries and their careers don't last as long. And I think that's a really important mindset to have as a coach is to balance out their training because they don't need more of what they're getting
Exactly.
5 times a week. So here we got a question here. It says, I've been diagnosed with Hoffa's syndrome and I have inflammation in both fat pad areas in my knees. It's been a slow healing process. Is there anything in particular in the rehab process you'd recommend?
So definitely have never heard of that before. And but I do have like, it's sounding terrible. Or is it just me?
No, I can still hear you. You're still
Okay.
good.
But I do have like just general principles for stuff like that. Like for me, when it comes to injuries, I don't get that hung up on the diagnosis. Because and a lot of times, like the treatment is going to be relatively similar. So, like if your knee hurts, there's going to be certain things that we want to do. The first one is that we want to get we want to increase circulation. We want to get as much blood flow in there as we can. And there are a few different ways we can do that. One, if you can tolerate floss bands, they're going to be awesome because they're going to get compression in there. So especially if we're dealing with inflammation, they're going to get compression in, can help really work through what like drain out fluid and things like that. And then we can get a fresh rush of blood flow back in. And then the backwards sled, like nothing's going to beat that in terms of circulation. Like those two things by themselves have been 80% of what I do that's helped guys with knee issues. Just because that idea of blood flow and circulation, we're trying to work with the body to accelerate its natural healing process. So the more we can do those things, the better. If I don't know what kind of like pain and things like that you're dealing with, but as far as if we can then start to work into full range stuff or full knee bends where my heels are elevated and things like that, that's going to help get into those tendons and ligaments. But again, that's going to help flush the joint out and things like that. So when it comes to inflammation, like just trying to circulate things as much as we can. And then after we've done that, we would want to get into like why that inflammation is there in the first place. So we can start looking at things like diet and nutrition and things like that. But for me, those would be the first few places that I would always go to.
Yeah,
Not working through pain, of course.
yeah, I have nothing to add to that because my top two for inflammation, which is again, we're working on principles here because I've never dealt with Hoffa's pad either, is ROKP and flossing. And flossing again, if you can handle it. But ROKP and flossing, I found for people where ROKP wasn't quite doing the trick, when I got them flossing, then the pain would go away, and eventually they would not have pain anymore. And then it would allow them to strengthen. And once they could strengthen through a full range of motion, they were able to build that protection so that over the long run, they weren't getting the same level of pain. And then eventually they weren't getting any pain. Yeah. So yeah, I'd say the same things. And then again, yeah, after that, look at diet, look at, are you sleeping enough? You know, are you getting light? Like, are you going out into the sun if you can, 30 minutes a day? Just like simple, holistic things that you can do that you wouldn't realize would make a huge difference in your inflammation that don't have anything to do with training.
Unrelated too, but like with the sled stuff, like with the reverse out knee pain, like it's Ben pushes that heavy for obviously. But people like my athletes don't realize like how much of a fitness benefit you can get from that. Like it's crazy. Like my guys that really get good at that, like that really like we do like are like the time trials, different versions of that, like at the end of our speed plyo day. So we do that once a week. It's usually the start of all of our sessions, our warm up, but then we really push on it once a week. And like the results that my guys get from it, like I've had guys do 1 or 2 sessions and come back and talk about how light their legs feel and stuff like that and how quick that they played. Like I feel like that piece is very like it's underrated. Like people think about like, oh, that's just like for the knee health and stuff like that. Like if you really get after that, like how your legs feel when you play, like it's ridiculous. Like the fitness side of things is unreal.
And to speak to that actually, so when I went to visit Ben in May, I want to say, and that was the first time I did sleds, and I got absolutely murdered. So then when I came home, I was like, I'm doing sleds every day. So I did sleds every day, every day, every day. And when it came around back time for our season, And by the first game, obviously, like, you got no wind because you haven't played soccer in 6 months. But by the second game, then people were telling me, like, dude, how do you keep running all the time? And I'm like, because, like, I've done so much sled work, like, my tolerance for what is leg fatigue has, like, gone from here to all the way up here. So, like, you just keep running and running, and yet you're right. People don't understand the benefit from, like, from being able to push through, like, lactic acid buildup. And then also you get a lot when you go up and you do the type of work you're talking about where you take it up in intensity, your cardio game goes up. Like, you just become more durable. You can last longer as an athlete.
Yeah, you know, like I have one guy who, you know, like when we're doing time trials, like everybody, they just take off, and then like at some point everyone, you can physically see them like hit a wall where they just stop moving. Like, he just keeps going. Like, I don't understand. Like, we'll go full field down and back, and it's like a sprint the entire way, and it's absurd. But then he talks about, like, in the game, it's like the same way. Like, I start going and I don't stop. It's like, all right, dude. Like, it's crazy. Like, it really is. What's going on, Cam? How you doing? Good to see you, dude.
Well, we did have one question. Let's see. Oh, how do I know when, like, I've had knee pain and I feel good now, but how do I know when I'm ready to go back? So I'll start with this one just because. So there's an article that Ben has. If you go to, I don't know if it's still on the site, the new site, but it's called 5-Step Knee Pain Checklist for Sports. And his is basketball focused. But if you take those principles and apply them to soccer, then you can test whether or not you're ready to play. So I can break those down as best as I can remember them. So, like, step one would be to do some sort of warm up. So I created like a four exercise dribble warm up where you just dribble forward 3 sets, building up to max intensity. Then you dribble backwards 3 sets, maximum intensity. Then you do an inside cut and an outside cut. You do 3 sets of those, building up to maximum pain-free intensity, and that takes your knee basically through all the major ranges, inside, outside, forward, back, that it would go through in a game. If you have no pain, wait 2 or 3 days and then go do some hard kicking. And then if you have no pain on that, you can go the next day and you can do some more skill moves at kind of again, 3 sets, but build up. And then, you know, do them finish at a higher intensity, you know, whether it's a Croy turn or whatever your most commonly used moves are. And then if you have no pain on that, wait another 2 or 3 days, and then you can try to play your sport. So basically what the principle is, if we boil it down, is gradually build up the intensity, give yourself a little time to rest, then test again. If you ever have any pain, start over from the beginning and test again. Because the big mistake that Zach touched on, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago in your post, which is if you get injured at 100% and you come back to play your full sport at 90 or 85%, first of all, you're 100%, but only good enough to get you injured. So if you come up at 85 to 90% of that 100, you're going to get injured again, and it's going to suck, and it's probably going to be worse than the first time. So be real gradual about it.
Yeah, that's great. I was just going to say the same thing in the terms of, like, building your way into it. Start slow and see how it feels. Like, trust yourself, essentially. Like, feel it out, and if it feels good, keep going. But he's got a much better, like, actual structured approach for that. So try that one.
Yeah. So I think, yep, I've done that mistake. We all have. Trust me, my whole high school career was a mistake. And from that,
yeah, and I honestly am running into that problem with some of my athletes. Sometimes it's like we do a few sessions and like, oh wow, like I'm starting to feel like really good, and then like they get too excited and they go back and play, and then like they get kicked again. It's like, gosh, and now we gotta back up again. So yeah, it's
app when I'm looking at people's forms. You know, you get these people in the comments like, well, I was feeling really good, so I went out for sprints, and they're like, fucked again. I'm like, well,
yeah.
Like, this is important for anyone who's listening or made it to this point, is just because the pain is gone doesn't mean the cause of the pain is solved. So the pain goes away first before the actual full healing has happened. So just because you don't have pain anymore doesn't mean that the underlying cause of that pain, that issue has been solved. And until that issue has been solved, you're going to keep having the same problems over and over and over.
That's good. I like that.
Let's see. Let me drink this water.
I got to go before too long, my guy. Do you want to figure out a way, like, or anything we want to touch on is to kind of wrap things up? Or if there are any more questions, I'm happy to go for that as well.
No questions. So if there's any, like, for you, I'll throw it to you. If there's anything that hasn't been said or just like a wrap up you want to give. Oh, wait, we got one more question.
Okay, thank God, because I had nothing for that.
Advice for patellar tendonitis. Yeah, patellar tendonitis for me, again, ROKP, flossing, the couch stretch, basically what your Patrick steps. So you want to strengthen kind of that inner quad VMO area, and then you want to loosen up because a lot of the times the quad is so tight it ends up pulling on the kneecap, and then you have problems. Other times it can be from like too much jumping if you're a basketball player. But yeah, if you do couch stretch, ROKP, and you floss, then it'll go away.
Yeah, and I just add in some of the ISOs for that too. Like that's where they can be really powerful. That's where like Jake Tura has great stuff about that on different podcasts and things like that. But the lunge ISO is a good one, or like a leg extension ISO as well. Doing either max time, so getting up to like 60 minutes or 60 seconds or 2 minutes, or doing max intensity for about 30 seconds. That 30-second window is the time period you're really looking for. Like pushing against the leg extension as much as you can, that can get some really positive change like in that tendon itself. So yeah, that'd just be the only thing I'd add to that.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Don't neglect like low-level plyometrics, like really low-level plyometrics or these ISOs, because strengthening the tendon will help.
Word.
All right, so I think that's what we got for you guys today. Also, it's ridiculous that as many people pull their hamstrings in professional soccer as they do.
Oh, if that was actually one thing Owen and when we were talking about the top speed stuff. Like, yeah, if Pulisic pulls his hamstring again, I'm gonna write a strongly worded letter to Chelsea, and it's gonna be
Where like it's just ridiculous that he pulled it and then he re-pulled it again in a warm up. Like, come on, man! Like you guys should know about top end sprinting and Nordics, and if you do those two things, you're not gonna pull your hamstring.
Yeah, that hurts.
I tore mine when I was 19, 20, and then I had no confidence in it for 2 years. But once I started doing Nordics at a low level, like I've never felt worried about tearing my hamstring again, or like even pulling it.
And that's probably a massive thing for me. Like, that could be one thing we end on. Like, when they was asking about when do you know if you're good to play again and stuff like that. For me, one of the biggest things that's one of my goals is when guys are coming back from something, it's not even to get them like out of pain, it's to get them out of their head. Like for me, like I broke my ankle when I was a freshman and had surgery on it and all that stuff, and took like probably 10 months to come back like physically, and took easily another year before like I felt like myself again. Like I felt like I could trust it when you don't have to think about it or anything. Like you can go and play, and like you go for a run or something like that, or you go for like a cut, and then like afterwards you're like, oh, I didn't have to think about my knee or my hamstring. Like, that's when you know you've made it. That's when you know you're back. And so when guys tell me that, we're off to the races.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's really important because the mind is even more important than the body. You got to be able to trust it. So before we go, Zach, tell people, where they can find you, where they can find your website, more information, stuff like that.
Here, this is the best spot. Yeah, Instagram's where I do most of my stuff. I was just peer pressured into starting a TikTok, so we're on there as well. But yeah, I've got a website at, it's just zachwoodward.com, Z-A-K, because I'm weird like that. But yeah, other than that, just DMing me is the best way. I answer questions and stuff like that all the time. I'm much more of like a hands-on guy like that than formal things to go through and check out. So.
Awesome. All right. Thanks everyone who joined us. Everyone who follows me, who's not following Zach, I highly recommend that you do that because he's got a lot of good information, and he touches on some things that we don't spend a lot of time on ATG that can give you even more well-rounded approach to the entire kind of world of strength and health.
Dude, appreciate you having me on. I'm stoked we finally put this together. We got to do it again soon.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, my man.